Well, hello, everyone. We're delighted to have you with us today, and I'm delighted to have with us Ron Smorynski, who is an author and a hobbyist and animator and all kinds of cool stuff. And we're going to get into all that in just a little bit. We're going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy and magic and all that and things that many Christians are afraid of. And so Ron, thank you for being a part of this interview. It's a delight to get to meet you and get to know you, and thanks for joining us today.
Good morning. I just woke up, so
we're on different times on the coast, so it's early still for you. I know.
Well, I do love mornings, but yeah.
So how can you? I'll just start out from the gate here. What many Christians I'm sure are asking, because I remember in the 70s and the 80s when Dungeons and Dragons was considered satanic in church, and so how can you, as a God-fearing, Bible-believing Christian who attends a church pastored by the likes of John MacArthur, no less. How can you...
Don't let him know I do this.
How can you play Dungeons and Dragons?
So, definitely in Dungeons and Dragons now, the publishers are very anti-Christian. With a smile, with their tolerance, they're very anti-Christian. But I just don't, to me, I don't really care about them. I care about my own storytelling. I care about my own little group and what I want, because we're just trying to have a good time. We're just trying to take a break from the world and just go into a story. And usually, though, obviously there's good and evil. There's when we do it.
Tell us what might help. Tell us a little bit about what Dungeons and Dragons is. And because a lot of people, I think, just hear it and they conjure up all these images. But what is it? And when you talk about how you can create your own story, explain that a little bit to people who may not know about D&D.
Right, well, I'm the dungeon master usually, which is the guy or the DM or game master GM who creates the world or story that I want, and then there's players, and the players can pick. They create their own characters, and they can be a fighter, a paladin, a thief, a wizard, a druid, a cleric, and whatever they want. And then, each one of those gets certain, like you have dice. I'll just show you some dice. Like this is a 20-sided dice. You can see all the numbers on there. So we use a 20 system, and when we have 6-sided dice, this is a 4-sided dice. You can see.
Okay.
So 1 through 4. For instance, and this does like minor things, for damp. So, and creatures have hit points. So, like a creature has 10 hit points, and then you want to hit it. It's a goblin, and you roll to try to hit it, and it rolls to try to hit you. And there's hit points. So when you go down in hit points, you die. So the story is basically I, as a DM or GM, I create a village. I create the forest. I create what's the bad thing that the goblins are in the forest and they're pillaging the village, and I say, okay, you characters are now all in this village. What and everyone is scared. What do you do? So that's it. Then they get to decide. Do they want to attack the village and kill everybody, or do they want to inquire and ask why is everyone afraid? And I act out all the villagers, right? And 99% of the time, the characters all turn good. They all want to help, rescue, save. The druid maybe is worshiping a tree god or something to get his powers, but it's just a story. It's like it's what do you call it? It's a part of the element of storytelling where, well, how do I, as a druid, I'm a druid. How do I get my powers? I guess you're in the forest. You got to, it's being creative as far as how your powers are there. The cleric, what are my powers? Well, you're a healing cleric, so you get your powers from the god of truthness or whatever, or healing or whatever. So we have to create a depth to the characters and to the fantasy and to the world. And I don't want to bring Jesus in. I don't want to bring Jesus in because this is fantasy.
Right. And he's not fantasy.
Real. I don't want to bring.
Right.
I just don't want to bring him into this world because we're just trying to do a fantasy, silly, fun thing. You don't want to bring Jesus into chess, okay? You don't want to put Jesus down as you're playing chess. That's going to break the whole game.
What do you say to those that would quote Paul, though, that says, well, whatever you do all to the glory of God? And so can you do something like a role-playing fantasy game? can you do that to the glory of God without bringing God into it?
Well, God wants us to be creative. I'm assuming He wants us to be to do things in our life, And I kind of like the whole, you have one day off where you get to rest and worship God, and you got 6 days where you work.
Right.
So I like to think that I'm lazy in the sense of always doing glory to God. But
right.
even I still love. I don't know. It's not like at the end of the game I say glory to God or anything to all the players. I'm not going to do that to them. To me, it's more about I'm Christian and I'm accessible if you want to talk to me or if you have any questions about the gospel in that setting. Right. In other settings, I'm more vociferous, but in the D&D setting, it's like let's take a break from all the stuff that we're doing. But
I do want to. I want to chime in a little bit, and because I think that I know some of my audience is probably going to be like, "Well, wait a minute now. You're playing a game that's got magic systems and worshiping trees, and so it's a game that involves paganism and all that. And how can that?" But to back up for a second and echo the point you just made, you're basically saying that it's acceptable for Christians to engage in recreation and entertainment, and not be going through the 4 spiritual laws, with the people that they're playing with. So, I mean, and that would be the same argument for going out and playing basketball with some buddies, or going out and just going out to eat at an ice cream place or something, just general recreation. Is it okay for a Christian to hang out in the world and do something just fun and relaxing and not be talking about Jesus the whole time? Is that okay? I think some Christians would say, no, it's not okay, that we have to be talking about Jesus 24/7. So, but I'm with you that would be, I think, more of a detriment to the gospel than anything,
Yeah, I'm accessible 24/7.
You're going to want to have time to play with your kids, be with your wife, things like that. I mean,
yeah, I just, I love storytelling, and by the way, my storytelling is got the Christian message in it somehow, some way, or you can tell it's to the glory of God, whether even in its epic fantasy or whatever. But again, I just need a break, and even I want to be out in the world. I envision too Jesus when he first started and he was hanging out with the sinners,
right.
And so I want to hang out with the sinners, not because I want to sin. I don't.
Right.
I want to show them that there's a person who isn't addicted to sin. And to me, people in D&D or paganism or whatever, I even do medieval armored combat, and there's a lot of pagans and stuff in that. I want to still show them there's a Christian around.
Yeah, right. I think that's
still around, and I can take every insult in the medieval combat world that I'm in. I have a lot of them on Facebook. I do not compromise in my faith or belief when we argue on social media. I do not compromise, and they know it. They call me the angry paladin because I do not compromise I tell them exactly what their sins are. I'm pro-life. I tell them what you're doing and what we're all doing, allowing that to happen, abortions and all, homosexuality, whatever the sin is, and we all have these sins, and I tell them that, and so I'm not, I don't compromise in any of that. And if they want to kick me out of the group, that's fine. I'm, as much as I love anything in the world, if you want to, I'm not going to compromise my belief. If I get kicked out of D&D somehow, which or whatever, I'm fine with that too. Go fine, kick me out. I got Jesus, fine. I'll make up my own little role-playing system, because you can. By the way, Dungeons & Dragons is just a game system. You can make up your own role-playing game system. You don't have to use D&D to do the exact same thing that I'm talking about here.
Yeah, well, I think that's key. Dungeons & Dragons is a skeleton. It's a system.
It's a system,
and it really depends on.
You can create your own.
As far as whether it's good or bad, it depends on the group that's playing the game, and particularly the dungeon master, the guy running the game.
Well, and also, just so you know, there's not just fantasy. There's Pulp Fiction. There's H.P. Lovecraft kind of horror. New England. That's very pagan horror. There's science fiction type role playing games. There's all anything. You can do a role playing game about being a youth pastor. You can literally create with dice and
Yeah.
how are you going to do that? Or a pastor. How do I run a church? You could literally make a D&D game, a role-playing game about pastoring a church. And the pastors could all come together and create the rule sets, the dice, create the sinners that come in or whatever the issues are, and the marketing of the church. I mean, that, and that's actually, that's the core of.
So in that game, does the pastor get to zap difficult church members? Just
you're the pastor. You tell me. I don't know how that works. That's what D&D is. It's just a game system.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and how, your history with D&D, and you also write fantasy novels. You said you love to be a storyteller, and you referred to your hobby as a medieval weaponry and stuff. So tell us a little bit about yourself in those areas and stuff.
Well, let's see. I'm an Army brat. I definitely started playing D&D early on. I love fantasy. I loved fantasy. I didn't really like, as much as I watched it, I didn't like the mainstream kid stuff, like Disney stuff or Sesame Street. I hated Sesame Street. I don't know why people today look back at it as some wonderful thing. I hated it, but I just wanted some. Yeah, so D&D. I started when I was 10ish, like really early, and I got obsessed with it. And I didn't get obsessed I don't think in a bad way at all. I got obsessed with it in a fun way. Like I just wanted to. It was amazing to be able to create your own world and stories and stuff. I mean, I got in a lot of arguments with other kids, but it's because I was just a terrible DM, not because of any weird beliefs or anything. So there was that. I've always been into storytelling, like I said. So eventually later on in life, I started writing, and the story about the writing is that I just went on Amazon. This was only like 10, 15 years ago. I've written a ton of stuff. Like if I was to put together all the rough drafts of stuff I've written in my life, it would fill up probably that shelf behind me. But none of it's ever been, I never really did it the right way. I was a very stubborn guy, very self-centered, and I was an atheist. So when you get to high school and university, they basically teach you not to be Christian and to be left, to be a Democrat and to be left, and that's exactly, I followed them. Exactly what they told me. And, I do feel I always had the Holy Spirit in me because he was always nudging me, but I just ignored him for many years. But I feel like I still was kept along a certain path, even though I kept trying to go off of it in my life. But anyway, so I wrote Alfred when my daughter was 3 or 4. I wanted to write something to read to her going to bed, my second daughter, because I couldn't go through another daughter reading all the stuff that I'd already read, so I had to write my own story. So I wrote Alfred, which is that book right there, Alfred, the series, the first book, and I wrote the whole thing, and then I read it to her, and it was a great experience. And so I got it published on Amazon, self-published, but I didn't know nothing about editing or whatever. So anyway, it sat there. Like, I gave it to my brother like years later, like 6-8 years later, dusty copy that I had and to read. And he's like my younger brother, half brother. But he kind of just left it in his room. He was in early college, or it wasn't that was not his interest, even though he likes Nintendo and stuff like that. Then my sister picked it up. She's a year older than me, one of my sisters, and she found it and she loved it. So she called me and just said, I love the story, but it's terribly written. So she hired an editor. She works up in Silicon Valley and makes money. She hired an editor. She went through it with me through the process. At that point in my life, which was 6 years ago, I was becoming Christian and I was becoming humble I was becoming a slightly better person. And so, and she, so I just kind of let her, whatever, I'm not doing anything with it. And yeah, I would never have done this before in my life, but now I was able to. Whenever she sent a picture or the document back, the full page was all red. It was all red. I never would have accepted that. Never, as an atheist, as someone addicted to myself. But as a Christian or whatever, getting tired, I don't know, whatever it was. Obviously, the Christianity is the 99% of it. But there's that 1% there that's about age and humility.
Mhm.
But I just said, yeah, let's just do it. And I just started, accept. But I learned a lot. And the editor and I have a good relationship as far as he's a Christian guy too, very Christian. And he really loved it. And I think it moved him quite a bit, the first book. And so he's been editing all since and I'm on my 5th book now. I'm trying to finish it. I'm literally at the last few chapters. And
Hey, you've written Alfred. Tell us about the Alfred series, and then you also have written a series, Evermeyer, which I actually have on my to-do read list because it's shorter. There's shorter books, so they're easy. I get really busy, and most of my reading is nonfiction, and so I'm like, when I read a fiction, I can't read these Brandon Sanderson, long tomes,
Right. So I did Alfred. The Conquest of the Evermeyers. I was just trying to do like a smaller little pulp type of fantasy thing, side gig kind of thing is what I was doing. I was writing that out, and I still have it all outlined. I've got about half of the series done, put up, but I haven't finished that one yet. I haven't finished Alfred yet either, as far as the series. But it's still, it's on its 5th book now. So those are both fantasy. The Conquest of the Mire is more lighter, it's more D&D feel to it, whereas Alfred is just more of my own fantasy. And then I also did Night of the Dead, which is about a dad in Hollywood, California during the zombie apocalypse, and he happens to have that armor.
Yeah,
that armor. Oh, God. Okay. And so he uses armor. He dons his armor in this modern day zombie apocalypse, and of course he feels that it's part of the end times. And I've written 4 of those now. Yeah. And
you
very harrowing. Very adulty though, those ones. Yeah. Very zombie gory. So
you are a hobbyist and you enjoy dressing up like a knight and doing all kinds of fun stuff. So tell us about that.
Well, it's funny. I was just talking yesterday to a guy who's having about finding something to do. And well, here in LA, I was like, I was getting I was getting pear-shaped. I was getting small shoulders and a wider bottom. So I needed to do something. I needed to get off the couch. And I was always a physical guy before in my life. So I was looking for a hobby. And then, in LA, you think you could do snorkeling, but no, everything here is dark. The water is very gray and dark and murky. Can't do that. So I was going to do kayaking, but I just didn't want to do that. Didn't want some creature swimming underneath me that's full of meat and teeth. So then I went in. So I found this. I found foam fighting first. Where they make sticks with foam, PVC or foam, and that's all like an honor system. Hit you in the arm, you drop your arm. Hit you in the leg, you go down on a knee. That was fun for a little while, and then it gets a little LARPy, like live action role playing, which is you kind of. I didn't even do it that much. I didn't care for that part actually, which is funny because I do Dungeons and Dragons. It's sort of a cross between Dungeons and Dragons and using swords, really going out to park and whatever. So then there's SCA, which is Society for Creative Anachronism, which was started from the Lord of the Rings back in the 80s or whatever. But they have a very elaborate system of medieval rules and stuff. And they use rattan sticks, which is solid bamboo. And they again use a point, well, one hit is a kill. So if you get hit, you go down. But you do wear armor, but it's very light armor. Now this here is this is full steel. The weapons are thick steel. There's a chopper.
Yeah, I can see it. Yep.
That's the chopper. The one on the left is the chopper.
Okay.
It's full steel, but it's blunt. It's very heavy. It can break bone, but no one ever gets their bones broken. I don't think. But it's very big in Europe. Like they have the Russians and the Polands, and it's becoming pretty big. It's a big sport, like a big arena looking thing, And so it's a lot of fun, but it's very exhausting and brutal as far as the hardest part is putting the armor on and just standing there waiting around. That's like, the toughest part of it all.
Yeah.
But I am 51, so I'm not going to last that much longer doing this. It's, that's around when guys start to say, okay, I can't do this anymore. But I've only done it for a few years now, but I've enjoyed it. And, did some tournaments, but I don't want to travel like the other guys. You know, they all want to travel and prove their merit. I'm more the local. I'll fight in local tournaments with a team or groups or whatever. But yeah, so it's fun. Keeps me, forces me to do some burpees.
So what is the D&D culture like? You know, when you go out, I mean, and interact with the wider, because it's a huge community. I mean, it's a huge community, very popular. It seemed like it had a resurgence in the last few years because it was big in the 70s and 80s, and then it kind of died off, and now it's huge, you know, at this point. So
yeah,
what is that culture like?
I think the 3rd and 4th edition of it got not as popular because it became very niche, and then the 5th edition, which is this edition, I think they just kind of simplified it, you know. And I didn't play 3rd and 4th edition, by the way, which I feel is oddly guilty because I was living another life, you know,
right,
and doing other things. But I did 1st and 2nd edition when I was a kid, and then I played other things. I played a lot of other systems. But the reason I decided to do it again is because my brother told me it was fun, easier, blah blah blah, more popular, and I was looking for something to do with my family. Actually, it's a great family game, by the way. We have a lot of fun with it, and I'll even have my wife's sister or aunt, so aunts, or my sister's aunts to my daughters, come in, and I will set up a game real quick. You know, they've never played before. Greatest time ever. The aunt from England who's never, you know, we're talking 40-year-old-ish or whatever, never done anything like this. I threw her in as a little cleric, little healer. Her village was destroyed, and my daughter's characters were little elven heroes who came in and rescued the village. And she was so, what? And I said, so what do you do? And she just, oh my gosh, I try to heal some of the villagers, you know, and okay, you heal them, and they're healed, and you help them, and you better hurry up and move along before the orcs or goblins come, and then my daughters come in and start shooting and, you know, taking them out, and she gets all like, what? Mm-hmm. D&D is a great family night, or whatever role-playing game. A role-playing game to me is a great family night. You know, you get the family together and play. So
that sounds interesting because most. What
was the question? The world, the D&D world.
What's the D&D culture like? I mean,
well, it's very secular. It's becoming very pagan. A lot of the popular players that you might see, because they're doing a lot of YouTube and Twitch TV kind of playthroughs of the game. You know, there's a DM, and then there's the players, and a lot of them are becoming very you know, with the piercings and the tattoos and the you know, the Canaanite look. They got that Canaanite look down. I mean, I feel like that's the world, though. That's the world we live in. I mean, isn't that in everything now? Because in coffee shops, you see the same people. You know.
I think you know, Christians would say, and I'm playing. I can't say devil's advocate because, you know, but I'm playing the Pharisee advocate, I guess. You know, that they would say, well, why should we as Christians go into a culture that's dominated by the Canaanites and the Jebusites and the Philistines and all that, you know, and even in modern day, you know, and then add to that in Deuteronomy, you know, I'm sure you're familiar with this passage.
Oh, you're gonna throw verses at me.
I'm sure you've heard this before, but you know, because I had an interview with a lady that I respect, and she quoted this to me when it talks about how Christians should use discernment in the entertainment that they watch. That this is a good passage to go to, and it's Deuteronomy 18. It says, when you enter the land your God is giving you, do not learn to imitate the detestable ways of the nations there. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft, or casts spells, or who is a medium or spiritist, or who consults the dead. So Christian would read that and say, well, that means I shouldn't play any game or watch any movie or do anything that has this in it because it's ipso facto, it's ungodly. So what would you say to that person?
Well, those things right there were to them very real, right? They were very real. They were not entertainment. They were real. I mean, they were real. Like, these things meant actually things happening, especially the sacrifice. And I say, in all paganism inevitably ends up with sacrificing someone.
That's true.
Every path of that list right there. Actually, the sacrificing of children should have been at the very beginning or at the very end, because in the end, that's exactly what it ends up being.
That is very true. Yeah. Every single idolatrous culture
ends up
sacrificing their babies or their kids.
Or their adults or whatever they can.
Including the United States today, and it's sad to say that.
That's true. Yes. So, playing D&D doesn't do that. It's people. It's the people. Whatever's in their souls already, right? Or playing any game doesn't do that. It's what's in your soul already that does that. And as far as that Israel, you got to remember too. Israel was a very unique. He wanted them to really identify with their own, and then now we go out to the world, right? I mean, Jesus says, "Go out to the world." So we got to go out. We got to go out and interact with people.
Now, Paul later says, and I forget the exact reference, avoid the appearance of evil. So could someone take this Old Testament passage, which, by the way, I agree with you that this was God's command to his covenant people in an ancient context that was surrounded by these practices, and they were very real for these people. Yeah. And so God's telling them have nothing to do with these practices. And they ended up getting involved in those practices, and sadly, but today, I don't think, you've done the medieval hobbyist and stuff, and you've done D&D. I doubt you've ever been to an actual witch coven or done, whatever witches do or whatever. So for real, but what would you say to someone that's like, well, aren't we supposed to even avoid the appearance of evil? So even if it's fake and entertainment, shouldn't we stay away from it?
I don't know, the appearance of evil. I mean, as soon as we step out the door, I think we're going to be the appearance of evil. I'm glad he said the appearance of evil, because that means that you still have to go out and do something. You just don't comply, or you don't comport to what they want. Right? You don't. When it gets evil, or when they, and when I play a game, there's nothing evil in there, and they know who I am as far as I'm being a Christian. I'm not going to compromise. I guess there's the appearance. I'm not going to compromise, and if you want an appearance of evil, then compromise.
Well, let's chase out a little bit, and having gotten to know you a little bit before this interview, I know that you are very, very strong in your convictions, and you don't hesitate to advocate that on social media, in conversations, and so you definitely hold up.
I'm assuming I'm gonna get canceled here at any moment, but
right.
I'm so unknown that I guess it doesn't matter to anyone.
So I want to say to anyone watching this, I've gotten to know this guy, and I can tell you he's very strong in his faith and very, very committed to that, and willing to face consequences for that. So I think just specifically focusing on the magic and the sorcery that's often in a D&D game, this can be broadened out to looking at TV shows like Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie or Star Wars, the movies or whatever. Is it wrong for a Christian, and I think I know your answer to this, and so if you can elaborate on it, to play with make-believe magic, so to speak, or is that too close to what the Bible tells us not to do?
I don't know what that even means, make-believe magic. I mean, that means, I mean, here's the funny thing. We Christians absolutely believe in magic. We believe in,
right.
Again, it's a game. It's like Settlers of Catan. Maybe we should cancel that out, or chess. I don't even play Settlers of Catan, but my daughter said, it's a lot of fun. And I'm like, whatever. That thing sounds like magic. You or chess, you set up a certain grid. Well, that must be magical, because they can't move except through that grid. So there's magic forcing them into these, grids, and the chess and the pawn pieces are forced to be certain things. That sounds magical to me. So again, it's storytelling. It's like Marvel. It's just storytelling. You can make it. I don't know what to tell someone that doesn't want to play a game or doesn't want to go out into the world and see what the world is doing and be a light in that world. If it affects you so badly that you think you're going to go pagan, let's look at your faith then. Let's look at what you actually believe in the word, because that's what I would say to someone who thinks they're afraid of a game turning them in or making them if you go out into the world and the world affects you, then we need to look at your faith, not at the world.
My dad and I used to make games up when I was a kid, and he's passed away now, but we used to create our own games, our own rules and stuff. And we played this one medieval combat game, and then we decided to add dragons into it, and then we decided to add wizards into it, and the wizards control the dragons and stuff. And I remember when we were playing this game, I was a student at a Christian school, and I remember thinking, man, some of my teachers would not approve of me playing this game with my dad. But it never occurred to my dad or me that we were consorting with Satan or anything when we did this, and because it was just total make believe. It's just like there's nothing there. So I've heard it said, and I think this makes sense, that there's a difference between you going to a fortune teller to have your fortune told.
Yeah, that's weird. That's because you're thinking that's a real thing.
Yeah. Versus you just playing a game. Because on one hand, your mind is thinking this is just entertainment. This is just make believe. It's like Superman, no one believes. No one with a reasonable mind, believes that there really is a Clark Kent that runs into a telephone booth. I guess he doesn't do a phone booth anymore, but and then up and away. But there are people that will read horoscopes or read the astrology charts and things like that, believing that there's something real there.
Yeah, see, I don't believe in the astrology things. I think those are retarded. Like,
yeah. So
to me, that is not entertainment. I mean, maybe someone else thinks that is, but yet they're thinking of it in the sense of it's going to affect their life.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that's a difference. Paul talks about the meat offered to idols, which that's what I would throw this whole D&D thing into. That is do you believe it's real? And are you causing someone to stumble? And so I think those are the two questions that we would need to ask ourselves, whatever we do.
Yeah, when I see a Christian that maybe is being affected by something, I don't think about that thing. I think about them. What is your deal?
Yeah.
What is your dealio? What is your faith issue that you are allowing a little game to suddenly make you pagan? I don't think it's the game. I think it's you.
Well, the D&D, we're talking really about a system. It really is when you break it right down. It's just, and I don't know anything about as much as you do, but it's just a rule system, So when you can
create worlds, you can create your own worlds around that system, or you can use their world, and they're offering a world because it's a lot of work to create a world, or and do it. And of course, they want to make money. It's just, creating a bunch of different books with different adventures. But just so you know, Superman and the Marvel series and Disney are very pagan. The Disney movies are incredibly pagan.
Yeah, they are.
The Moana, the kids are watching. It's just about a pagan goddess thing, and the Justice League, which I enjoy the Justice League, but it's all Greek mythology, all the with space and then with aliens.
Yeah.
And same with Thor. I mean, it's all.
And I think that's important because if you're a Christian and you take a stand, Dungeons and Dragons is inherently bad. We should stay completely away from it. Then, in order to be consistent with that stand, you would have to separate yourself from any movie, TV show, basically out there. So, but let's just say you've got someone that just is like, okay, I hear what you're saying, Ron, and I agree it's not a sin, but I'm just not comfortable with that. But I like the idea of the role playing. Are there any Christian alternatives to Dungeons and Dragons?
Yes, and I've tried to like involve myself in them, but they just sort of fell short as far as whatever. I think there was one back in the 80s too that was popular, but again, and I would love for someone to create one. I mean, I could create one too, but I don't want to. It's just the work of marketing it and and already churches are already saying no to that kind of thing, thinking it's already evil. So I don't want to even, I'd rather just enjoy my life than fight that. But there are some out there somewhere. You got to search. I found a couple, then I just sort of forgot about them,
right?
Just because it wasn't that well developed. But and also in D&D, you could create a Christian world, a world with Christian motifs or morals or values. And actually, when I DM, I generally tend to have more good, a good versus evil, a moral compass. And I generally tend to make the characters want to do good, want to save, rescue, fight and I make the evil very evil. Like I kind of make it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to echo that because I think I I'm ashamed to admit I have not read Tolkien's books or Lewis's fiction, but I've watched the movies. Uh, and I love the Lord of the Rings movies and the Hobbit movies. I loved that universe. I love that world. Uh, and my dad always tried to get me to read the books. I just never did. But and I love the Narnia movies that came out, especially the first one.
Uh-huh.
And those are not the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was you could tell the Christian allegorism in there and stuff, but Lord of the Rings was more subtle. But still, as a student of the Bible, I could see biblical themes all through the Lord of the Rings, and especially the theme of sin and how we pursue sin and then it pursues us and takes us over, and traps us. And so, in fact, I believe that the Lord of the Rings is the best allegory on sin ever, ever created. And so,
and by the way, a lot of pagans are taking Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
We know it was written by, a Catholic guy, but it was meant to be a Christian moral thing. But pagans are taking it over. They're creating Tolkien groups and Middle Earth groups, and the Christians are receding or retreating from that and from the world, I guess. And so the pagans are taking over everything in a sense of just becoming the majority. And then when they become the majority, they start to separate it even further. Right? This happens to our universities. This happens to any kind of worldly thing that we as Christians try to set up.
Yeah. If you're a Bible believing Christian and therefore tend to be morally conservative, and I'm going to offend some of my listeners when I say this, but honestly, if you are truly a Bible believing Christian, you're going to be conservative on social and moral issues. Then you have to acknowledge that we're losing control of our culture right now. I mean, Christians are losing influence over the American culture, and you can see what's happening in our society, and clear evidence of that. And this is a pet peeve of mine. That's why I appreciate folks like you and why I reached out to you. I feel like Christians have receded, just like you said, and have surrendered these cultural hotspots or whatever to the enemy, and we just aren't. We're taking our marbles and going home, and then we wake up and we're surprised when we're surrounded by paganism all around us, and it's sad,
Yeah, and when a few people try to, even in Hollywood, when they try to add a nice scene of a Bible or a Christian thing, there's no Christians backing them up. They just get attacked by the left,
Yeah.
and pagans, and then no Christians stand up for them. And that's what's happening today in the cancel culture. Christians are backing down. Thankfully there's some waking up, but I feel like we're just backing down. And so to get back to a lighter mode in the D&D world, I want to be someone, or even in the fighting, I'm a Christian. Here it is. Here's what a Christian looks like. And I'm just as annoying as you, except I believe Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. And I still want to have fun. I still, want to do things, but I know who my Savior is. Here I am. Ask me a question. Instead of I say this to quite a few guys that we get in an argument. I said, instead of telling me what Christianity is, why don't you just ask me?
Yeah.
And they don't even understand that concept, that they should just ask me. So we're at that point in life where they're telling us what Christianity is, and I'm like, okay, that sounds horrible. Why don't you? I am a Christian. Why don't you just ask me? And they don't want to ask me though.
No, it messes up their narrative, and stuff. And well, the fantasy culture. And when I say that fantasy, I'm talking the make-believe fantasy culture, and I define this very broadly, and that's anyone in the gaming, anyone that's involved in the comic books and the movies and all that. That very broad culture, everything from Marvel to DC to Dungeons and Dragons to Pathfinder, Star Wars.
Pathfinder.
Yeah. Is
What do
it?
you know about that?
Isn't that like a? I've heard it described as a dumbed down D&D. Is that accurate?
I'm surprised you brought that one up. Yeah, it was like an offshoot. I don't even know the full history of it. I've heard a little bit on podcasts, but it's like an offshoot of D&D back in fourth edition or whatever. And to make and so there, I don't know what they have if they have a license or what. I don't know what it is, but yeah, it's another game system, but it's copied off of D&D. But yeah, but go ahead. Sorry.
You would agree that whole fantasy culture, broadly speaking, is very influential in American society, right?
Yeah.
So how is there room for Christians in that culture, or are the people in that culture kind of circling the wagons and keeping folks like yourself out of it?
They're not circling the wagons. They're charging forth with the wagons.
Yeah.
I mean, they're coming into the churches as opposed to we're circling. I don't even know what we're circling because it ain't wagons. It's and they're coming into the churches with that stuff. So I don't understand why we're receding or not doing things. Now, if you don't have any interest in D&D, that's fine. That's if you don't have interest. But some of the kids in your school, your church, are going to have an interest in something. I mean, and you got to.
I guess what I'm getting at is, I'm thinking as a parent, my kids are pretty much grown now. My son's a high school senior, but daughter's in college. But thinking as a parent, it seems like the whole comic book culture, the movies, the TV shows, these games, have all been taken over by non-Christians who are more on the left, and especially on social issues.
Yeah.
And it seems just hopeless, And so a parent who's in protection mode, I want to protect my kids from these bad influences, is going to be inclined to say, just stay away. A lot of them are. Other parents just oblivious to it, and they're just like, whatever. But is there any hope? You're a Christian who's in that culture, in that group. Is there any hope for Christians? I'm not going to say taking it over, but at least having a meaningful presence that can have some influence. Does that make sense? Or is it just like hopeless? We've lost.
Well, if you read the Bible, it is hopeless, right? In the end.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we give up. But I'm going to go back to kids though. I have two daughters. They're strong in their faith. The Lord is their savior. I didn't, they have their own paths. And I'm pretty like. I don't try to show them because they know everything I do is stupid. But they've chosen Christ as their savior, and so I'm like, whew, I'm done, and they still got their path to go on. They're young in life, but I've taught them about the world. They know the world. I'm not going to hide the world from them. They know exactly what the world is, and I'm talking from the sexual to everything else, to the life, pro-life, to and when I mean sexual, I mean the adultery, the perverted, the whatever, the extremes. I've taught them everything. They know everything. So, and they're my daughters. So I've taught them everything, and they know the world. So the world cannot pull one over their eyes, cannot fool them. They see it clearly, and even in D&D or in the movies, they know exactly what it is. They know my issues with it all, so I don't hide anything from them as far as that. So to me, and I'm a creation guy too, 6,000 years. So that's crazy. And that's absolutely absurd. But I tell
you're
them
just no pun intended, but you're a dinosaur.
What's that?
You're a dinosaur, no pun intended. Pro-life, believe the Bible, believe in creation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not confused. I'm not confused at all. And I taught them all that. And I was great years ago before my older daughter even accepted Christ. She sent me an image. And she goes, look, from high school, because she, we did homeschool, but then she did some high school too because of sports. But she said, look, Dad, and she sent me the she took a picture of the evolution of a camel, and she said, look, Dad, another drawing, because evolution is all about drawings.
It is.
And so I already, inculcate, I always forget that word, or inculcate, where you give it, what's it called?
Inculcate or whatever.
Inculcate, yeah. I've already sort of inculcated them from the world. So they know the world. I gave them the vaccine, which is, I told them about the world. I didn't hide it from them.
or inoculate. I think it's
inoculate. And so
inoculate.
they're not confused now about. And remember, the world is going to try to pull one over your eyes. It's constantly using deception. And when you tell your children what the deceptions are, then they'll see them. But if you don't tell them, or if you don't let them know what it is, they're going to get deceived. I think, at some point. I'm not saying it's going to take away their faith, but it could delay their faith or delay, in this life.
So let's say you've got, and I'd be in this category, you've got some Christians that are like, you know what, this D&D thing sounds fun. It sounds entertaining, but I'm concerned that I'm going to get in the wrong group. I get it that it's.
Don't be concerned you're going to get in the wrong group, because you will get in the wrong group.
Okay.
You will get in the wrong group.
It's like, cause I think a lot of people would be like, look, I want to enjoy D&D. I want to relax. I want to have fun. I don't want to be put into a situation where I've got to
put yourself into a situation. I mean, really, put yourself into a situation.
Yeah. So
now, if you want to have fun with it, then have fun with your family. But
right.
Even then, it's going to be whatever. Yeah. But don't be afraid of anyone or anything. Put yourself out there. If you're in a group and it's all gays, figure it out.
Mm-hmm. So and that's being salt and light, is just being willing to.
If they kick you out of the group,
well,
then that's the worst that could happen. What is that? What's the pain and what is the suffering going on in your life if you get kicked out of a group that doesn't want you in D&D? What the?
So, where should a Christian that's interested, or whoever interested in getting started in D&D, how do I get started? What do I do? And I mean, do I start with a family game? Or if I'm single and don't have a family, or if my family's not interested in D&D, do I go on Discord? Do I go on? I mean, how do I even get started? In D&D. That's question one. And then question two, you got a cool project that you're putting together. You and I have talked about a way to kind of introduce Christians to the game by getting pastors involved. So if you could tell us a little bit about that too, that'd be great.
Two questions, and I'm not going to remember. Okay, so the first one, how do you get involved? I mean. For me, it was kind of weird when I got back into 5th edition and I was playing with my family. I think the best way is to do it with your family, really, to start off. And you only need a couple of books. Here, I'll just show you. And I'm not trying to promote D&D to anyone. I just So the Player's Handbook is the main book, and this has all the rules basically to create characters and fighting and whatever. And that's a giant. Anyway, and then here, of course, scary monster manual. That's just a list of monsters that you can fight, whatever. These I'm getting more and more embarrassed now. This image is of a lich, and this is for the dungeon master. And these are the 3 main books, and this is the guy. This is a lich, which is an undead. Yeah. So you're gonna lose your faith once you read this book. But this is about world building, creating your own world. This does have a list of gods, in it if you want to use them or not. Blah blah blah, and treasures and whatever. And of course, the back on my shelf there, the little black and red. That's there's more, which are all like world settings, different worlds or extra rules, more spells, whatever.
And just for anyone that's scared by the covers on that, I guess a reminder that
don't read the Bible then, because the Bible's got some scary stuff in it. Don't read it.
It's a reminder.
The Bible's got a witch in it.
Yeah.
Got a dragon in it, dinosaur dragon thing. It's got brutality, war.
But I guess
gore.
In defense of
spells
of Christian critics of D&D, in their defense, though, they would say, well, it's one thing to read a book like the Bible that's telling us about these things. It's another thing to read something that's encouraging us to be entertained by these things, And so,
completely different things.
Yeah,
absolutely. And one is real and one is fake. One is fantasy.
Yeah. And your position is stay away from the real stuff, but don't be scared of the fake stuff,
Well, I'm going to be a little harsh here. My position is if the real or the fake makes you lose faith, you never had faith to begin with, right?
Okay.
I mean, if you're
But
All
could
right,
you apply that to? Could you?
I'm coming.
I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, but can't you apply that same argument? Just following out the logic here. Should a Christian watch pornography? No.
No, yeah, absolutely not. Yeah.
Okay, so or should a Christian watch simulated pornography? Where it's like it's not real sex.
I don't want to go into this only because I have a big life-changing thing about all that.
Okay.
And that would, that kind of extreme, but
is there
to me, watching pornography is engaging in it, right? It's a part of the same sin.
Okay.
And so watching a bunch of witches hexing Trump in their little apartment, that would obviously be a ridiculous thing for a Christian to do. I would immediately leave that room and probably not involve myself with them. If I knew that in my D&D group there was a few people that were doing that, I'd be like, what is your dealio? I would probably engage them in a debate, whether during the game, because that would annoy me, or after, or talk, But at some point, I don't want to argue with these people anymore, and I'm just going to shut that off. But I would still play the game with them and hope that one day we engage in a better level. But I would never go to their house to hex a Republican or whatever they want to do.
So I think the early Christians actually dealt with this in many ways with the gladiatorial games, and it's like, when you're going to an arena and watching people actually kill each other, you're participating in a vile act in that sense.
Yeah, and that's pornography too.
It is, yeah. But when you go to, and it's exactly right. I agree with you. That's the same. It's porn. That's violence porn.
That's when that was given me as a revelation, and I realized how pathetic I was.
Yeah.
But going to a medieval tournament is not a sin because they're still fighting each other.
Right.
And like what we're doing, we're medieval combat. We're totally,
right.
But we're not killing each other. And
yeah.
So,
my family, for my 50th birthday, they took me to medieval times, and we and we watched. So have you been to medieval times? Or
no. But I've seen video images of it.
But it was entertaining.
It's funny.
Fun.
Sure.
It was,
Sure. Yeah.
But when I saw the knights out there fighting, and clearly fake fighting, because it was like some of those like, oh man, that sword didn't even come close to that guy, and the guy's like acting like, but it's like I think this is a very important point for our listeners here. There is a huge difference between going and watching a medieval armor tournament like you participate in, or going to medieval times at a dinner theater and watching actors out there, versus going to a real Roman Colosseum in the first century and watching people actually kill each other. There's a huge difference between that, and that's what you're trying to bring out here with D&D. It's like, there's a huge gulf of difference between actually going to a Wicca gathering and participating, or just observing with great interest the actual casting of spells and actual witchcraft type activities, versus playing Dungeons and Dragons. So, and I can see that difference. A lot of people can't, but I'm with you on that.
So about finding games, and there's ways to find games, like they're on Reddit. They have a LFG, looking for a game. There's that, and yes, you're going to get a ton of non-Christian people. Period. Mm-hmm. You can also go to your local game stores if they have one. They should have, in an area, or Meetup sometimes has them. But again, I would. I don't really care too much whether, it's not like I'm not trying to promote this as like every Christian should play D&D. I'm just trying to say, get out there in the world, and because the pagans are all looking at each other and creating their own myths, and there's no one there to tell them the truth. And I'm sort of like a rock in their well, it's becoming more of a river now. I'm a rock standing there, and I'm looking around, and there's not too many more other rocks. So this water is just flowing. So anyway, so the project now, and this came up because of another pastor contacted me, and I was a little like, I got, what? I got too much on my. I'm busy, dude. Just get back to your pastoring. I'm making some D&D. I have a YouTube channel where I'm doing D&D stuff, and I'm doing it just for fun. I'm just trying to, I am kind of trying to promote myself as a person for my books and writing, and I do a lot of D&D like stuff, but I'm not. I don't really want to make money, make it as a living. So, but I just wanted to do some kind of videos, and so I'm doing these D&D videos, just how to play, better ways to play, blah blah blah. And I even have one video about being a Christian playing, and I think he might have seen that as well. But he was looking for stuff online, and it's kind of funny is he doesn't really play with anyone in his church. None of his church people know that he plays D&D, but he plays with his family. But he contacted me saying, "Hey man, do you want to play D&D online?" And I'm like, "This guy's, I thought this guy's weirdo, or whatever." And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, "Wait a minute, what if I could get pastors to play, and make it kind of like a mission field? I mean, it's not a mission field, but it's you know what I mean. It's just still getting out there." And so I contacted him back about that. I said, "What if we get some pastors to play?" And I don't know what the level of whatever it is it's going to be, but I would like to see a bunch of pastors play and see what you guys do. Try to make it light and fun, as opposed to serious and soul crushing, and just see what happens. So then there's that, and then I found you through. I was trying to. How do you find pastors who play D&D? You can't. There's no way, and you don't play D&D. And I just found you because for some reason, it came up, because you fantasy and you blog a bit about fantasy books. So I just decided to contact you to see if you were interested in something like this. And it's the weirdest thing to request from a pastor, because I even asked some pastors I know, or one pastor rather, in a group at my church, and we're not back together yet, so I can't even really talk to anyone,
Right.
We're still not back, which is kind of a bummer. But he didn't even know what I was talking about, so he thought it was a video game or something. That's how far gone he is.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of pastors are just totally clueless about it.
Oh, well, clueless,
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, but also to the extent that we even hear about it, it's been like in a lot of Christian circles, it's like bad, stay away, it's Satan, kind of. So,
well, that to me sounds like the world. So, when you say it's bad, stay away. It's like, well, that's the world. So, what do we do now?
I mean, well, it's like I think there is. I didn't read the book, but there's a book that came out very recently called The Benedict Option, and I believe the whole thesis of the book was withdraw from the world. It was just. The world is too far gone. We just need to pull back, and it's the monastery type approach, and that's where a lot of Christians are in that mode right now, and it's sad. So
yeah, I don't think the world's going to withdraw from the monastery, though.
No, it's not. Yeah. So that I want to wrap this up in respect to your time here, but tell us as we're closing out what your next projects are and where you are with your fantasy. You talked a little about this already, but you're looking at finishing the Alfred series and then the Conquest of Evermire, and then you have any other projects on the plate?
Just passing from this world, really. I mean, that's really the only. I mean, I'm very blessed in my life. So I am coming. Just to let everyone know, I'm coming from this position of haughtiness because I have a lot of comforts. So I am very blessed. I think God knows how weak I am. He's going to give me a lot of comfort. I feel like, So I do want to admit that I'm coming from a position of strength and being blessed, right, with my life. God has not made me suffer that much at all, so I don't know what that's all about, and I am grateful though. So I'm just kind of in cruise control. I really wish God would just completely make it clear to me, but obviously that's not the way He wants any of us to be. As far as what I want to, what I should be doing for Him, but I'm trying to do things. None of it ever works. My sister and I think my daughter even said, "Look, or my wife said, look, you've gotten our family to the faith." I had a weird in the last 10, 15 years to get us to this church and all that, and get my daughters in there to know their faith. So there's that. So I'm blessed with that. But writing, I'm just enjoying my writing. I'm just plugging along. I'm just trying to do it when I can. And then the D&D thing has obviously been a lot of fun and with the family. And then now I'm hoping that this pastor thing will come up. Any other pastors out there that are intrigued by our little video? If you are intrigued, please contact this guy or me, because we we have two pastors, right? Are you a whatever, senior pastor or pastor of a church?
I'm the senior pastor of our church. Yeah. So
and same with the other guy. So, but you could be a senior pastor. You could be, I don't know if it's a junior pastor or associate pastor, youth pastor. We're lowering the standards because it's hard to find these guys. And we're going to probably do the Tuesday evening for 3 hours. I will cut. I like to keep that time 3 hours. I don't want to stretch it out. 3 hours is enough. But anyway, so if anyone out there is a pastor and would be interested in doing this, yeah.
Well, Ron, thanks so much for your time. It's been a great interview. Appreciate this discussion. I look forward to our game, our D&D pastor game, and so we'll have more information on that when we round up some more pastors. So
just one or two more is all we need, because just two guys, and we just need 3 is fine, 4 is the optimal for a game players. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
well, thank you so much, Ron. Best to your family, and we'll talk soon.
With your daughter and son.
Thank you.
Cool. All right.
God bless, and
God bless
take
you.
care.